who is the player of the game? Well, I know people aren't going to agree with my player of the game. And I went back and forth on this late in the fourth quarter after a couple of things that occurred. But our RTI Threads player of the game is Reese Dakin. 8 punts, 4 punts that landed and were downed inside the 10-yard line. We're going to get to those in a second. 2 punts of 50 plus. Now, the only reason I sort of hesitated was because I think Coach Patterson, and it'll be interesting when we get Don on here in a few minutes, I'll be interested to get his take on the punt return for a touchdown for Northwestern, because I do think that punt, first of all, that was a 45-yarder, so a little short based upon every other. I mean, it was his second shortest punt of the day. Not great hang time, and it gave the rookie, the freshman returner, walk-on returner, an opportunity to have that split second he needed to find a seam. He did so and returned it for a touchdown. But what a difference Reese Dakin made in that first half. We're talking 4 punts inside the 10. And let me read you where these punts were down and give credit to the entire special teams gunning team, right? The entire punt team, they were all a factor in this. But Dakin had 4 punts inside the 10. One was down at the 6, one was down at the 6, one was down at the 6th, and another was down at the 5. And remember, in that first half, I was struggling to gain ground offensively. They had not yet made, well, a couple of the punts. I shouldn't say that. The change was made to Brendan Sullivan with about 9 minutes to go in the second quarter. But it took Brendan a few drives, a few series to, I think, get his feet under him. It wasn't like he was making big mistakes, but certainly his ability to move the chains as the game proceeded, especially with his feet. I thought he looked composed from the beginning, but it just took some time, I think, for him to gain his confidence. And I think it was just a major turning point in this game to be able to control the field in spite of bringing in a fresh face, a guy who's not played inside the 20s, like between the 20s this year. He has not played. And Reese Dakin was phenomenal. And this is a guy who early on in the year, people were complaining about the hit Iowa had taken at that position. Reese Dakin is not Tory Taylor, but he is really good. And he's a true freshman. And I would anticipate he's going to get better. They did a phenomenal job. LeVar Woods did a phenomenal job going to Australia, going to the same kicking academy, and finding another kid from down under, a kid like Reese Dakin, who is younger than Tory was when Tory got here. But again, Dakin has been phenomenal, and he was phenomenal tonight. He probably could have been awarded this earlier in the season because punting is such a big part of what Iowa does with field position and how Kirk plays, whether you agree with the punts on 4th and 1, 4th and 2 or not. He was phenomenal. He is our RTI Threads player of the game. We're going to get some insight from Tom Caker to HawkeyeReport.com. So we'll start with Tom. Tom, welcome. Fresh
Good.
off Kirk Ferentz's media availability. You're safe back in the press box, it looks like. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. I'm having a little computer issue getting logged in, so hopefully I'm audio available.
You are loud and clear, and everybody's having problems tonight. So about 10 minutes ago, something went wrong with my technology. Everything shut down, so we had a caller who was hosting the show for like 20 seconds.
Wow. For some reason, StreamYard doesn't like me anymore. I don't know what happened, but we're good.
They're not used to all these 40-point performances for Iowa, so maybe that's what it is. But Tom, you just got done talking with Coach Ferentz, and obviously I'm sure there were a number of questions about the quarterback position, but I want to start with the defense, because coming off a performance very un-Phil Parker-like at Michigan State, first drive today there were moments where I was like, the guys are open, they're going down the field. They end up, I thought it was an odd decision to kick a 50-yard field goal personally, especially with a guy who sounds like the backup kicker, their punter.
Yeah, he's their punter. He's their punter and their backup kicker because their kicker's hurt.
Now, Don will tell you a story about a young man who was a former kicker that could kick field goals pretty well, who ended up being I believe Mike Cyphers, right? That's who you'd bring up, Don?
Correct.
Who could do both. But I thought it was a weird decision. Nevertheless, the defense really didn't miss a beat after that. They were just phenomenal. What did Kirk say about Phil's unit and how they bounced back?
Yeah, just that he expected them to play good. They just played good. It was fun in the post game because usually we do individual interviews, and Jay Higgins and Nick Jackson decided to do their interview together. So they were talking a lot about, the big plays and how the early in the week they had worked on some tackling and just, it's attention to detail. And I knew they would come out and play great today. They're locked in, they played terrific after that first drive. They really shut them down and played dominant football pretty much the rest of the way. In fact, I joked with Quinn Schulte, I asked him if they consider this a shutout, and they said no, because the only points were a Cade McNamara pick six and a punt return. The defense didn't give up any points.
And ironically enough, that came right after an interception for the Iowa defense. So really can't blame the defense for those 7 points.
Yep.
So there's a theme going on in our live chat, and maybe it's because I prompted this early. I'm in no way trying to imply that I think Cade McNamara is not dinged up. What I will say is there are people, Tom, and you can already anticipate this. There are people that are going to look at this situation because it sounds like Kirk made a comment about Cade tweaking something in his knee. Is that accurate?
He did not. There was no nothing about the knee in his post game. He said he got dinged up, knocked around. I think it was on the big hit where they got the personal foul. And I think that's what he was talking. That's what he's talked about. He never mentioned anything about the knee, and Cade was not moving around like a knee thing. It seemed like, and Kirk also said in the post game that they had planned on playing Brendan. They were like, the fourth series, and I don't know if that's what it equated to. I haven't even looked back on the play-by-play to see if it was the fourth series when they brought him in, but it seemed like that was something they were, based on what Kirk said, they were planning on putting Brendan Sullivan in the game at some point and doing some sort of like, hey, we're going to get him a couple series and see how that goes. But then with Cade dinged up, according to Kirk, they just, wrote it because, Brendan's first three series weren't anything to write home about. There was 3 and out in those first 3 series. And then that last one before the half netted them a touchdown. And then they just took off with everybody doing a little bit of everything in the third quarter and the 28 points that they scored.
I guess my point, somebody did mention in the chat that Kirk said something about a knee. So thank you for clarifying that he did not make a comment about knee. But he did make a comment that he was dinged up. So I guess the theme from people is
hinted. Let me just say he hinted it was more head than knee. That maybe he got his bell rung, kind of thing.
Right.
So
there's going to be people, Tom, that just basically are saying they're going to call his bull crap on that and say he's not dinged up. That's just Kirk trying to protect Cade. And I'm not saying
there were people in the press box doing that. Not me.
Okay. So, I mean, I thought it was a little. Remember 2 years ago? Was it 2 years ago at Northwestern when Spencer Petras was pulled for Alex Padilla? That was at Northwestern, and the same thing happened, right? Petras was out with an injury, but was playing poorly, and people had wanted a quarterback change. I think different situation here was that you have a much more seasoned guy who I have no doubt in what you just said, Tom, that they had planned to play him. I think they're Kirk's being 100% honest in that. I thought go Tuesday gave indicators of that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I thought that they were going to probably do something like this. They came close to flipping the switch on things last week, I think, to get him out there in the second half. But then the offense did fairly well. I mean, it scored 20 points in the second half last week. So, but it was just real apparent that something needed. I mean, it was going to start getting messy, I think would be the right word, with the crowd kind of turning on Cade gradually. And then I think after that interception, even though he got hit, there are some that saying, well, it was still a lousy throw. He got hit later after the ball was out of his hands. I don't know. It didn't look good. And then, but I thought it was interesting. We talked to Caleb Johnson, just got done talking to him. And based on what he said, he basically said the offense is different with Brendan in there, and things kind of opened up more for him when Brendan's in there. And I'd agree with that. I mean, because they have to adjust defensively. But Brendan kind of hinted that he didn't know if that was the case or not. But hearing Caleb say that kind of opened my eyes a little bit, you know.
Do you think Caleb gets reprimanded for saying that?
No, I think he's just being honest.
Well,
You know, that it just, and Kirk, you have to understand Kirk Ferentz speak, but I think Kirk was kind of saying that Brendan's going to be the starter next week. That we're gonna see him out there.
I just can't imagine that not being the case. But
it would be interesting to get the crowd reaction next week if 12 trotted out there instead of 1.
I don't think you can do that.
Don gave me a funny look.
Don, throw your hat in
I
the
have
ring.
no idea what that reaction would be.
Don, do you have anything?
Would it look like the Texas game last week, Don?
Maybe. Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, it's a couple of 5 stars, but nevertheless. Don, anything for Tom specifically from the presser? I know you and I have not really had much time to go back.
I have some injury updates too. So
Sure.
Reese Vanderzee, it looks like an ankle sprain. It looks like he's probably going to be out a bit. It seems like nothing for sure, but Lachey went out too but he could have went in a pinch. So I don't know that that's going to be long-term. Kyler Fisher was sick. They think he'll get back Monday. I see somebody asking about Lachey at halftime. It sounds like he's going to be okay, but they could have went to him in emergency. Who else were we missing today? Nestor has soft tissue.
What's the latest on Bo Stevens?
Bo Stevens, I walked by me. He's got some sort of brace on his ankle. So you can see it under his sock. The ankle looks significantly different. So, but he was moving okay. He was walking okay. So I think he's closer, but I don't know that he's going to be back next week. And Ostrenga is still in a sling. So they won't obviously tell us exactly what Ostrenga is, but I'm going to guess he's got a broken collarbone, and that's going to take, 4 to 6 to heal probably, depending on how you heal.
Yeah. Somebody was asking about tight end involvement a little bit ago, and Addison Ostrenga was taking a lot of targets away from other people through the first month of the season. So
yeah.
And then is Hayden Large healthy, Tom?
He's been dinged up. So I think he's back and forth on things. They brought him back and then he went back out again. And so we'll see with him. But Johnny Pascuzzi, how about that play today? There's your play of the day. Almost got in the end zone.
I don't know what's more impressive, Pascuzzi making the play or, the heads up, play by Brendan to flip it off to him and then run to go block for his tight end. So,
yeah.
Great. It's a guy who's paid his dues, right, Tom?
Sure.
Somewhere else.
He was in the portal.
Yeah,
he was in the portal at one time. So,
came back. So, absolutely. Don, anything for Tom before we let him slide?
Can't think of a thing right now.
All right, Coach.
Well, Tom.
Good to see you, Tom.
You too, Coach.
Enjoy your time staying put in Iowa over the next week. You'll get. We don't have anything. You get to. Are you covering the women's exhibition on Wednesday?
No, Kyle Huseman will be covering that. So I'll be.
Kyle will do a little job, and you'll get to stay put until next Saturday, right?
I'll get. And I kind of wonder if it's going to be a night game. I kind of think it might be. So.
I was.
Go ahead.
I was told from a pretty good source heading into this game was that if both Wisconsin and Iowa won, it would be a 6:30 game. I don't know what will happen if Wisconsin loses. And I don't even know. Is that game going? I'm assuming it is.
Yeah, they were. I don't know what the score is. I know at one point it was 3-0 Wisconsin, but I don't know what it is now.
Yeah, 7-3. Penn State leads Wisconsin second quarter. So we'll keep an eye on it. And I'm assuming the Big Ten will announce that tonight, if not tonight, tomorrow. Right?
Yeah, tomorrow at the latest. Tomorrow with the latest.
Tom,
Hey, thanks,
needs to
guys.
follow Tom over at Hawkeye Report. Thank you, Tom. We'll talk to
Yeah.
you next week.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, sir. Tom Caker, HawkeyeReport.com, on3.com. All right. Don, where do we start? Lots to get to. Quarterback change. Caden Weegen's return. The very strange Jay Higgins interception. I'll let you choose where to start. I'm assuming you want to start with quarterback.
No, actually, I would not.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why, Corey. I was in practice on Wednesday, and typically I'll run into a few players as the practice ends, and I just talk to them randomly. And two of the players I happen to talk to, I want to tell you about the conversation now. One of them was Quinn Schulte. And here's what I said to Quinn. I said, Quinn, I'm sorry about Saturday night because I know you have good hands. And I'm going to predict right now, that'll be the last potential interception you'll ever drop as a Hawkeye player. And he said, thanks, Coach. That means a lot. I appreciate it. And I said, well, I hope they throw your way a lot. I hope you get your hands on a lot of opposing passes because I don't think you're going to drop a single one. And when you know it today, he made a great play for an INT.
Yes, he did.
And I was so happy to see that. And then one of the other guys I talked to, just an odd coincidence, but I talked to a punt returner. And I said, Ken, you're doing all the right things. Just keep the faith because it is only a matter of time before you bust one. And he said, well, that's how I feel too, Coach. And I said, okay, continue with what you've been doing because you're doing all the right things. I did talk to him about if he feels hemmed in on a sideline, give thought to putting his foot in the ground and clearing back toward the middle of the field. And I reminded him that Tim Dwight used to do it that way sometimes. And he smiled and he didn't mind at all trying to be like Tim Dwight. I think he really looks up to Tim as he should. And how appropriate that just a few days later, 3 days later, he hits his first return for a touchdown. So I don't want to take credit for either one of those, but it's just kind of ironic that I talked to both of them on Wednesday and they shone brightly on Saturday.
Yeah, good stuff from both those guys. And that was a fun. I mean, the Caden Weegen return, Don, I just thought, it's one thing to be able to highlight speed, but we've talked about this. Returning punts is a different skill than returning kicks. They're two totally separate skills, but we saw his speed on that punt return. Am I right? I mean, he just busted through when he had a chance.
Yes. And it appears to me if he wanted to become a tightrope walker, he'd be good at that too because he did a great job of staying in bounds as he went down the sideline.
Yeah. Good stuff. Don, I want to run through some notes. Usually we don't get to notes, at least some of my notes, toward the tail end. So this will be at least an opportunity to do that. So let me just run through a couple of comments. We'll start with the first quarter. I think I mentioned it when Tom was here. Did you find it odd that, Northwestern's moving the ball effectively to start the game? They get 4th and 2, and typically an area where you may decide to go for it. And I know points are going to be at a premium against Iowa typically. I just thought it was odd to bring your punter in to kick a 50-yard field goal. The kick was nowhere close to going in. Did you find that decision to be a little weird?
Yes. And let's face it, I don't know what kind of range he has, but obviously doesn't have great range. He is the backup kicker. What would make more sense to me is exactly what we did to them. Why don't you go ahead and push punt and down it inside the 10 and play the field position game? That makes more sense than missing a long field goal.
Right.
Or another option, of course, simply going for it on 4th and 2.
Yeah.
But
and
again,
then not long after that, you have Iowa. I thought Tim Lester came out early, attacking through the air. We saw a couple of first down throws, which we don't see a lot of. We see a lot of rush plays on first down.
More aggressive play calling to start the game.
More aggressive play calling, and Seth Anderson, tremendous leaping grab, explosive play. How long did that play go for, Don? The leaping grab up the middle of the field.
42, as I recall.
So super explosive play. And the only thing I would say is if Cade hits him in rhythm and it hits him in stride, that's a touchdown. Is that fair?
Yeah, had to leave his feet to catch it. He couldn't just run under it, as I recall. It was a diving catch, right?
Yes. And then Cade followed it up with another, I'd say, poor throw in the end zone where Seth had to lay out again, nearly got his toe down, but did not. Iowa ends up settling for a field goal. And that kind of summed up Cade's first quarter, I thought. You know, the plays were there to be made, but he just made some poor decisions and really bad interception. The interception that got taken away by the phantom roughing the passer, I thought it was a bad roughing the passer call. I thought Anthony Herron felt the same way on the Big Ten Network broadcast, Don, because the call was roughing. It wasn't. It was not differentiated that he drove the quarterback into the turf. It was just roughing, which would give the impression that it's a late hit on the quarterback.
Tell me this, Corey. Was the ball out of his hands before contact was made?
Yes.
If so, it was a horrible throw, of course.
Listen, I need you to go back and watch those plays because I'm telling you this, on both of his interceptions, he was only credited with one interception because the one was brought back. Don, neither one of those plays was Cade using laces. And I say that not because, we haven't made a big deal of that on here. We've talked about the laces thing, but on that first play, that first interception, which was taken back due to the roughing the passer penalty, you can clearly see as Cade throws, the ball just slipped out of his hands. The ball just slipped out of his hands and went, I don't know how far up in the air, and you knew it was going to be picked. But it sure looked to me like that was somebody that didn't have control of the football with his hands because he was not using the laces. I mean, I know he's been doing this apparently for a long time, and we just recently noticed, but is this laces thing? Should we be talking more about that with Cade?
Well, there are some guys that do throw without the laces, but and I don't know what the numbers say, but my best guess is most quarterbacks find the laces and throw with their fingers across the laces. I think that's what most quarterbacks do.
What percentage of the quarterbacks that you coached threw without laces? How many?
I don't know, maybe 100%. Oh, I'm sorry, you said without. 0.
Yeah, without. So you had no quarterbacks that you can recall that made it a habit of throwing without the laces. I'm not talking about a quick boom, boom, like quick throw where you don't need to have the laces, but he's routinely doing this, Don.
Well, we were more in the center back in those days. And, of course, the center puts the ball up so that it is in position for the quarterback to have his throwing hand with his fingers across the laces. But even in the gun, quarterbacks that I coached, there were a few throws, as you mentioned, catch throw. Obviously, you don't have time to find the laces. Catch throw, you practice it.
Right. Absolutely.
These are simple high percentage throws where the ball has to come out right now. And in that regard, it wasn't much of an issue. But in general, quarterbacks that I coached found the laces. Even if they were in the gun or in the pistol, they found the laces. As they were surveying the field, they found the laces. They just, without thinking, just spin the ball so that it's in the right position.
Sort of like a lot of basketball players, three-point shooters, they find, I don't even know what you call them. I've been playing basketball my whole life.
Seam of the ball, I guess.
They find the seams of the basketball oftentimes, not always, but you go back and watch that play, Don. It was not a hit that caused the erroneous throw. The ball just slipped out of his hand as he's trying to throw. And then how about the second interception for Cade? It probably wasn't a good decision to throw it to Lachey, but on top of it, he threw it to the wrong side. He threw it. The placement of his throw was poor.
Well, you've heard me talk about never ever telegraphing your throw. He stared Lachey down. He threw the ball late where he threw it, and of course, not entirely accurate, and the defender had obviously anticipated the throw too and made a nice play on the ball. No better play than what Shorty made against Northwestern, of course. And the sad part of that one, of course, it went to the house. It went 75 yards or whatnot. But it's rare when a team scores 14 points and yet the opposing defense didn't give up any of them. But that's what we had on this day: a punt return and an interception return. Offense had 0. Specialists had 6, and I guess ST had 8, right? They had both the ATs plus the punt return.
Don, do you want to guess who our RTI Threads player of the game is?
Well, I haven't seen all the stats, so you better not say Sullivan, because then you're really declaring your loyalties.
I'm declaring my what if I say Sullivan, Don?
Your loyalty.
Loyalty? No, it's not Sullivan. No, there were some people that wanted me to make the player of the game be Sullivan. No, who do you think it actually is?
Well, again, I haven't seen the numbers.
It's not Caleb.
Okay. Oh, it's Wiggin.
No, it's not.
Why not? Should be.
I will debate you on that, Don.
He had 4 punt returns for 111 yards. He had 3 kickoff returns for 65 yards.
One of those punt returns was an 85-yarder, so I don't want to hear about the 111 yards.
Okay, you got me there.
But we can talk. You want to talk about impact? Let's talk about our player of the game, Reese Dakin.
Good choice.
Good choice?
Yeah, absolutely a good choice. Correct me if I'm wrong, those inside the 10, they might have been on consecutive possessions.
Yes, they were.
4 in a row.
You know what actually happened, Don, is I'm going through the play-by-play, trying to solidify who our player of the game is. I'm tracking these punts, and I actually had to keep going back, and I'm like, am I looking at the same play over and over and over again? Because every one, Northwestern 6, Northwestern 6, Northwestern 6, and then he punted to the Northwestern 5. Those were 4 straight punts. 6, 6, 6, 5. That's impressive stuff, Don.
The reason I'm smiling, I flashed back on a game. We were playing at Illinois State, and they had the wind, and we were pinned up maybe 3 times in a row, I think, something like that. And I said, not anymore. And I believe we were on the -2. And you know what happened? On first down, play action pass, 98 yards. Might have been 99. I think it was 98. But I said, I'm sick of this lousy field position. We're going to change it on one play. And the play went all the way for a touchdown to Marco Thomas, an outstanding receiver. Kind of gutsy to throw play action out of your end zone, but let's face it, they're not expecting it, especially on first down.
Reese Dakin, our player of the game, 4 punts inside the 10-yard line, 3 of which landed at the 6. 1 was down at the 5. And then he also had 2 50-plus yard punts. Did have 2 that were around 44, 45 yards. And I will say his one bugaboo, Don, I thought the punt return for a touchdown, not enough hang time on that one. And I think he would probably say the same thing.
I couldn't help but notice for some reason, even though he had a long field, for some reason he did not spin the ball that time. Go back and look. It was an end-over-end kick. It didn't have quite as good a hang as most of them normally do. And as you know, Corey, those without hang time sometimes come back at you.
Yeah, absolutely. That was his one slip up, and it was almost covered, but it was just a little too short a hang time from my perspective. And I'm guessing he would say the same thing. But boy, he's improved, Don, hasn't he? As the season has went on, he's really matured quickly.
Nice punts. I remember the one that was 44. That was after the touchdown return. 44 yards, but with excellent hang time.